Now let's open our RStudio and let's try to do some statistics and data visualization. So the first thing I did is to open a new R script. And then I'm going to type here, if you get better by 1% each day for a year, what changes you are going to see. And the second point is that if you get worse 1% each day, and what changes will you see? So these are the two important points. And to do that, we need to prepare our data. And then once we have our data, we are going to do some data visualization. We are going to visualize the changes one day after the other for a full year. So now let's prepare our data. So I think we can define, like, as you get better, the better data can be named as M, and that's our get better data. And you can also name N as the get worse data. So I define this to be null because I want these M and N defined in the RStudio. So on the right side, you can see these M and N objects are defined now. So now let's create our better data. So we can start with M squared brackets 1 equals 1. So when you use squared brackets, you are talking about the ordered value. M squared bracket 1, that means the first value of the M vector or the M object. So the first value, the base value is 100%. And think about a random day. Let's use I. So if a random day has a value mi, then that value needs to be multiplied by 1.01 to make it to be 101% better to the other day, to the next day of it. So this is mi plus 1 equals mi times 1.01. So ith day will get 1% better, and which will give you the value of I plus 1th day. And for the for loop, we need a for loop to get this run for a year and to go through it day by day. So you need to type for, and you use a pair of parentheses, and then you type I in 1 to 365. That means I can take the values 1, 2, 3 till the value of 365. And then you can use another brackets to get together all these values to run the loop. So I can actually run these lines here, and you can see that M object is defined. It has so many values, actually 366. So we start with 1 and we check all the values within the next year. So this is our M value. And you can also create the N value, which is the getting worse data. So you can type the same thing for I from 1 to 365. So we still let the first value, the base level, to be 1. And then the I plus 1th value will be the ith value times 0.99, because we are talking about the getting worse data. Getting worse by 1% each day. And then let's run these lines so that we can prepare the values of the results when you get worse 1% each day. So far we have created our M and N values. Now we need to combine all of these values together so that we can prepare a data set. So let's name a better data, and let's do a combination called column combination, and we are using 1 to denote the getting better category. And then we can put our M in there so that this is a data set with the first column to be 1 and the second column to be M. So you can actually click the little table sign, and you can see the first column is all 1 values because we want to identify the results of M with the results of N. So we are seeing the values are getting larger and larger day by day, and it has 366 entries. Now we can do the same thing. Let me type a note here. Now let's do the same thing for our words data. I believe you know how to do it already. So cbind, I'm going to name the category of words to be 0, and I'm going to combine 0 with N so that that data set is about getting worse every day. So the first column are all 0, and the second column are the value 1% worse each day. And now I can combine them together. So you know this is one piece of data set, this is another piece of data set. I actually need to stack them up so that they will be the habit data. So I'm going to call it habit data, and then I'm going to run the row bind because I really want to stack them up. I don't want to add different columns to the data set. So I'm going to use cbind, better data, and then worse data. So when I use rbind, that means I'm stacking up the data set. And also, when I stack up the data set, this is kind of preparing. Let's run it and see. So if I run this, and we can see the data is like this. All of them are named as V1 and M, and we are doubling our data entries. And you can see the V1 is changing from 1 to 0, and the values are stacking up from here. And then this is the getting worse data. And above that are the getting better data. What we can do is to make this a data frame, and then we also want to add the day information. So let's name our values from 0 to 365. It's like 0 is the starting day, and that's after a year. So when we use data frame, that means this is our first column, and then after that, those are our other columns. So we can actually run that, and then you can click the little table sign. You are able to see there is a variable here from 0 to 365. And again, that value runs from 0 to 365. And it should start from 0 here because we are talking about the worst data from the 0 here. So now we want to name our columns because the column names are very confusing. So we can actually use the column names function, and then on the habit data, and we name our columns as a list with ID, or you can call it days. After how many days? You can call it days, and then the second one you can see is either 0 or 1, it is getting better or not. So we can name it habit. And then the last column, we can call it results, because those are the values it turned out to be. So we can run this line, and we can click that table to see it again. So you can see the column names are all changed, which means we have our new variable names. And that's it. That's how we prepare our dataset. So by now, we have a full dataset to analyze. So the first thing I want to show you is that how to combine dplyr, which is the data manipulation package, how to combine dplyr with the ggplot2, which is the graphic package. So the first thing is to load those two packages. If you haven't had them loaded, you need to type install.packages, and then you type dplyr. So you need to run that line if you haven't installed that package before you run the library function. Same thing for the ggplot2. If you haven't installed this package, you need to type install.packages ggplot2. So in that way, you can use the functions in both of the two packages. So now what we are going to do is that, what if we draw a graph on the getting better dataset, right? I want to visualize the getting better dataset only because I want to show you how you should combine the two packages together in one code chunk. So the first thing I'm going to do is to type the habit data, and then I add the pipe. We need to choose the getting better data. Right now, the data is a combination of both. So the getting better data set is that the habit takes the value 1. So here we named the get better data set to be 1, named as category 1, and the getting worse data set named as category 0. So that's why when we select the getting better data, we want the habit, this column here, to be only taking the value 1. We can add another pipe, and then we can type ggplot. We can use a dot to denote the dataset because we are working on the dataset here. So we can just use a dot to denote the dataset we are working on. And then you can assign the aesthetic information. We can let x equals days and y equals results. So you can look back here. Days are like showing which day you are having which value. So we let x equals days, y equals results. And after that, you can add the layers to the ggplot. So you can actually type the plus sign, and then you can add the geometric objects. You can just run those lines, and then you are going to see a graph like this. So you can see the days, as the days moving forward, the results, the value is changing dramatically. It starts from 1 and it ends with about 37. And this is also how you combine dplyr with a ggplot function. So let's talk about getting better and getting worse on the same picture. What changes we are going to see. Before I do that, let's look at our habit data. So if you check here, the days are numeric and the habit is numeric, and the results is numeric. So the only concern I have here is that the habit is not a categorical variable because we named them as 0 and 1s, and the 0 and 1s are treated as numeric values. So what I'm going to do here is to change the data. So change the numeric values of that habit variable to a categorical variable, so that when we draw our ggplot, we are able to use the different categories to show the lines. So the habit data, the habit variable. Let me use if else. There are many different ways to do this, but I'm going to use if else function, and I'm going to check if the values are 1, double equal logic check. If they are 1, then I'm going to name them as better. If they are not 1, I'm going to name them worse. So this is a logic check. If true, better. If not true, worse. So this is how I define the habit data, and you can actually click here to see these 1 and 0 values are changing into better and worse. We can draw our ggplot picture. So first of all, the data is habit data, and the aesthetic information is x equals days. I'm still going to check how the results change according to the days. So y is still results, but right now, because I want to show how the changes are different from getting better and getting worse, so I'm going to specify the color equals habit variable in the dataset, so that we can identify them. Same thing, I'm adding the GEOM underline point. So let's run these two lines. And this is the graph of a better habit and a worse habit. So you can see if you're getting 1% worse every day, by the end of a year, the value is almost 0. And if you are getting better 1% every day, by the end of a year, you are getting about 37 times better. That's the major result I want to show you. And if you want more challenge, we can actually work on to add the ending values to the graph. That will be much more extra work, but let's do it. So the first thing we are going to do is to install a package, because it requires a new package to add the data labels. So you may want to type install.packages, and then you type ggrepl. So this is a package to add extra information. So you can type this line and you can run this package, this line, to install it. So you want to load that package. And then we can prepare our values. So to prepare that values, we are going to use habit data, and then we are going to use the pipe, and then we will group by the data according to the habit variable, like either better or worse. And then, so let me use the pipe in this way. So then I'm going to add the top n function, and I'm going to select the top first value of the days variable. So that means for the better habit, I'm choosing the largest value of the days. And for the worst habit, I'm choosing the largest value of the days. and we can run these lines, and you can get a printout here. So the last day for the better habit, the value turned out to be 37.8. And for the worst habit, you will be about 0. It is 0.0255. So these are the values, and we need actually to save this data so that we can add them as the data labels. So maybe we can name them as data n's. Even though we are seeing these values here, I would prefer to round the results up so that we are not seeing too many digits. So we can use data n's results variable and let it to be the rounding values of this variable. And then we can actually run these lines to see the results. So we are not seeing it here, but if you click here, you are seeing the table. We are only keeping 2 decimal points. And those are the ending values that we can add to the data. Let me first copy the 2 lines of code to generate the picture on the right side. And I'm going to name this picture as G, just the letter G. And then we can actually add G plus, so this is a new code chunk. So we are using that picture, but we are adding more information. So we can use G plus, GOM text, and then the REPL, so this is the package name there. So we are adding our ending data values into using this function here. So we are going to use AES label equals results, and then after that we are going to set up more information. The data equals data n's, and then the size of the text equals 3. And let's just run these values and see. So let me run these lines so that we have G defined. We are adding more information to that picture G. You can actually zoom the picture and you can see the values, the ending values of a better habit and a worse habit. So this is the ending picture, and if you are not satisfied with the looking, you can actually change the theme. And you can see this is a very simple one with white background with very clear 2 lines. And that's it. So I hope you can do better every day and be happier every day.